Hello, and welcome to the M.O.W. channel. Today, we're talking about one of Los Angeles' most haunting serial murder cases, the crimes of Chester Dwayne Turner, who was sentenced to death for raping and killing 14 women and one unborn child. Please make sure to hit the subscribe button. Let's begin today's case file. In 1966, on November 5th, a baby was born in Warren, Arkansas. His name was Chester Dwayne Turner. As a child, he experienced the collapse of his family when his parents divorced. When he was 5, he followed his mother to Los Angeles, a massive and unfamiliar city. But behind the glamour of Hollywood, the rough and neglected neighborhoods of South Los Angeles were anything but kind to a boy like Turner. He attended public school, but never showed interest in studying. Eventually, he dropped out of Locke High School and began slipping to the margins of society. As a young man, Turner worked at Domino's Pizza as both a cook and delivery driver, trying for a brief time to live a normal life. He lived with his mother then, but when she later moved to Utah, his life collapsed. With nowhere to stay, Turner began drifting between homeless shelters and mission houses in Los Angeles, becoming almost ghost-like in the city. This unstable life and deep isolation stirred the destructive urges growing inside him. The year 1987 became the point of no return. At the time, Los Angeles was overwhelmed by drug crime and gang violence, and public safety was shaky at best. Turner took advantage of the chaos and began looking for his first victim. On March 9, 1987, 21-year-old Diane Johnson was found dead at a road construction site near the harbor. She had been sexually assaulted and strangled, her clothes removed, and her body dumped on the roadside. This would become the pattern Turner repeated again and again. He didn't see his victims as human beings, but as tools to satisfy his urges, and he often left their bodies behind in degrading ways. Investigators treated it as just another violent crime. In a city drowning in violence, detecting the signs of a new serial killer was almost impossible. His brutality didn't stop. In June of the same year, 33-year-old Alondra Joy Spun became another victim. Her naked body was found in a trash heap, discovered by an 11-year-old boy. She had severe injuries to her head and neck, and the attack had been vicious. Turner's violence was becoming more calculated and bold. He often prowled the Figueroa Street area, a place known at the time for prostitution and drug activity, where many vulnerable women had been pushed to society's edges. Turner knew exactly how to exploit that vulnerability. On October 29, 1987, 26-year-old Annette Ernest from Louisiana was found partially nude by the roadside, and fear in the community finally began to take shape. An interesting detail later emerged. Annette Ernest's mother, Mildred White, knew the family of Andrea Triplett, who would also later become one of Turner's victims. It suggested Turner was circling the same neighborhoods, quietly watching for opportunities like a predator. What made Turner especially dangerous was the fact that he was repeatedly in and out of jail during this period, for charges like theft and drug possession. From 1987 to 1989, he spent short stints behind bars, yet police never connected him to the brutal murders happening while he was free. Inside jail, he acted like just another petty criminal and easily slipped under law enforcement's radar. Each time he walked out, his urge to kill only grew stronger. In January 1989, the body of 31-year-old Anita Fishman Breyer was found outside a garage off Figueroa Street. Her family remembered her as lively and hopeful, someone trying hard to overcome addiction. Turner took everything from her in an instant. That same year in September, he committed one of his most horrifying crimes, the murder of Regina Nadine Washington. She was 6 months pregnant. Turner strangled her, fully aware she was carrying a child. The unborn baby died with her. Police classified it as a double homicide, but limited forensic tools and investigative challenges meant the real killer slipped away again. At the time, the South Los Angeles area was haunted by the name Southside Slayer. Police and the media used the term to group similar cases together, but the truth was far more complicated. Multiple serial killers, including Turner, were operating at the same time, each in their own territory. Turner hid in that confusion. He floated between shelters, invisible by day, but at night he became a predator on Figueroa. He didn't care about the fear he spread or the pain he inflicted on families. What consumed him was his twisted desire, and the control he felt while watching a life fade under his hands. In these early crimes, one thing stands out: his anonymity. He left almost no fingerprints, few witnesses, and little clear evidence. The forensic tools of the time simply weren't advanced enough to pin him down through trace biological material. Turner believed the city's noise and dust would eventually erase what he'd done. And for many years, he was right. Investigators tried to find patterns, but with multiple killers leaving overlapping trails, cases repeatedly went cold. Turner only grew bolder. He knew the streets around Figueroa better than anyone, and he understood exactly where victims appeared and vanished. In 1991, Turner began a relationship with a woman named Felicia Collier, and they even had a child together. Outwardly, he looked like a partner and father. In reality, he was still a predator. He wore a mask of normalcy at home. But once he stepped outside, he became a cold, calculated killer again. His double life showed that he wasn't just impulsive. He was capable of planning, hiding, and controlling himself when it served him. Seeing his crimes reported in the news did not bring him guilt. If anything, he may have felt a twisted sense of superiority for staying ahead of the police. Turner's early spree was more than one man's descent into violence. It reflected a city struggling with poverty, inequality, and a justice system under strain. The environment itself helped raise a monster. Turner waited in the shadows for his next victim, while the souls of the women he killed had to wait years for justice. These early murders were only the prelude to the crisis and climax still to come. Believing he would never be caught, he continued staining Figueroa Street with blood, hiding behind the blind spots of the system, and proving his existence in the cruelest way imaginable. As the story moved into 1992, Chester Duane, Turner's crimes became more calculated, while the Los Angeles police investigation began drifting in the wrong direction. This was the period when Turner kept killing, yet somehow slipped through the cracks of the law. It was also the moment when the tragedy of innocent lives being destroyed by the justice system began to unfold. After the chain of murders in 1989, things seemed to quiet down for a while. But that was only because Turner was locked up for other crimes. His urge to kill had never gone away. On November 16, 1992, 32-year-old Deborah Williams was found dead near West 98th Street in the Vermont Vista area. Her death was the signal that Turner had started hunting again. But police still had no idea who he was. Barely a month later, on December 16, 41-year-old Mary Edwards was found dead on the 9700 block of South Figueroa Street. Both women had been sexually assaulted and strangled, and both crime scenes were in areas Turner knew well. With fear building in the community, the Los Angeles police came under heavy pressure to produce quick results. This was when a tragic figure entered the picture: David Allen Jones. Jones worked part-time as a janitor, barely getting by. He had limited intellectual abilities and struggled even to read and write. Police pointed to two things: Jones was often seen around the neighborhoods where the victims were found, and he had a history of drug use. Based on that, they labeled him a prime suspect. The interrogations were unfair from the start. Without a lawyer, Jones was pushed and cornered. In the process of admitting that he had used drugs with some of the victims, he was led step by step into statements that sounded like confessions to murder. It was a textbook example of coercive interrogation and a false confession. Once police had that confession, they moved quickly. Jones was declared the killer of Deborah Williams, Mary Edwards, and another victim, Tammy Christmas. While the real killer, Turner, continued walking the streets, Jones stood trial. In 1995, the court found him guilty of murder and sentenced him to 36 years to life. Locked inside a cold prison cell with no way to prove his innocence, Jones could only live with the weight of injustice. Meanwhile, Turner returned to his hunting grounds and became even more brutal. In April 1993, 29-year-old Andrea Triplett was found strangled behind an abandoned building on Figueroa Street. Her body was left half naked, a kind of signature Turner often left behind. The location was right in the heart of Turner's usual territory, yet police, convinced they had already caught the killer, dismissed it as the work of a partner or a copycat. Turner did not stop. Only a month later, on May 16, the body of 29-year-old Desiree Elma Jones was found in a backyard. She had also been raped and strangled. Before falling into addiction, she had worked responsibly in a nursing home and was known as a warm-hearted woman. Crossing paths with Turner sealed her fate. Investigators were shaken that similar murders were continuing, even though Jones was in prison. But they refused to consider the possibility that he might be innocent. Instead, they clung to the theory that several killers were active under the loose label of the Southside Slayer, and in doing so, they let the real predator slip away. One thing about Turner during this period stands out. He chose victims whose lives society had already turned its back on. Many struggled with addiction, prostitution, or poverty. Even if they went missing or died, their cases drew little public attention. Turner used that indifference as a shield. He seemed almost emboldened by the fact that his crimes appeared in the news, while his name never did. At home, he played the role of a man raising a child. At night, he became a hunter. He lived that double life almost flawlessly. In 1995, 31-year-old Natalie Joanne Price was found naked beside a vacant house. Her death followed Turner's familiar pattern. He was becoming bolder about where he left bodies, sometimes near busy roads or paths where people walked every day, as if he wanted to show he was untouchable. In November 1996, 45-year-old Mildred Williams Beasley was discovered in the brush near a highway. She was a wife and mother, but that meant nothing to Turner. His crimes continued through 1997 and 1998. In February 1997, Cynthia Annette Johnson was found in South Los Angeles. In February 1998, Paula Donnell Vance was murdered inside a hardware store in Azusa. Her case nearly produced the breakthrough investigators needed. Part of the attack was caught on security camera, but Turner's face was swallowed by shadows. Even with the killer's silhouette right in front of them, police could not identify him. Turner's final known victim, Brenda Briss, was found in April 1998 inside a portable toilet, only a short distance from the hotel where he was staying. The heart of this chapter is not only Turner's horrific violence, but also the second kind of violence carried out by the state: the wrongful imprisonment of David Allen Jones. While Turner walked free and continued killing, Jones spent the most valuable years of his life behind bars for crimes he did not commit. It was a social tragedy as devastating as Turner's own murders. Turner's crimes shattered more than bodies. They damaged faith in the justice system and destroyed an innocent man's life. Turner likely believed he would never be caught. With someone else already in prison for his crimes, it must have felt like a twisted form of protection. Instead of hiding his tracks carefully, he simply kept choosing victims who lived in society's blind spots. But the DNA he left behind was quietly waiting. Science would one day speak for the women he killed. Turner's rampage carved deep scars across South Los Angeles. It crushed the lives of many women and stole more than a decade from an innocent man, pushing the story toward its next stage: crisis and exposure. After the murder of Brenda Briss in 1988, Chester Dwayne Turner's string of killings seemed to quiet down on the surface, but that did not mean he had reformed or stopped. It simply meant law enforcement had caught him for something else, and he had slipped under a different kind of supervision. Until March 2002, Turner worked as a security guard at a homeless shelter in Los Angeles, wearing the mask of a reliable, ordinary neighbor. No one imagined he was the predator who had brutally murdered so many women over the previous decade. But the violent sexual aggression inside him eventually exploded again. He attacked a 47-year-old woman named Maria Martinez. He approached her asking for a lighter, then grabbed her by the throat and assaulted her for 2 hours. That crime became the turning point. Turner was arrested, sentenced to 8 years, and sent to the Tuolumne County Conservation Center. During this period, a major shift was sweeping through criminal investigations across the United States, including California. It was the rollout and expansion of CODIS, the Combined DNA Index System. In the past, investigators often collected blood or semen at crime scenes, but had no database to match it against. New laws changed that. Every inmate convicted of serious crimes had to submit DNA samples to the national database. Turner was no exception. As part of routine intake, authorities swabbed his mouth and logged his DNA. He had no idea that this tiny sample would become the beginning of his downfall. Turner likely believed that the murders he committed were either beyond prosecution or safely pinned on someone else. In September 2003, alarms went off inside the California Department of Justice DNA lab. Turner's DNA matched samples collected at the 1988 murders of Paula Vance and Brenda Briss. It was not just a coincidence. It was proof he had been at those scenes and had violated those women. Investigators immediately went into emergency mode. They sensed this was not about solving just 2 cold cases. Veteran detectives with the Los Angeles Police Department began reconstructing Turner's life minute by minute. They mapped his homes, his workplaces, and especially the Figueroa corridor where he prowled, cross-checking every unsolved homicide involving women over the previous 15 years. Using Turner's DNA as the anchor point, the team expanded testing to a wider set of cases. The results were shocking. By October 2004, only about a year later, at least 10 additional murders were tied to him. Science did not lie. Cases that had stalled due to lack of witnesses, cases that had gone nowhere for years, began clustering around one name. In the process, detectives uncovered something deeply troubling. Some of the murders linked to Turner had already been officially solved in court. Most disturbing of all, his DNA appeared in cases for which David Allen Jones was serving time. Police and prosecutors faced a moral crossroads. They could downplay Turner's involvement to protect their reputation, or they could admit their failure and save an innocent man. Thankfully, they chose the truth. They reopened Jones's files. The old investigation looked sloppy and rushed. It became clear that Jones, a vulnerable man, had been pressured into a false confession. Modern testing confirmed that his blood type did not match the evidence, and only Turner's DNA fit every scene. What began as the exposure of a serial killer turned into a reckoning with wrongful conviction, and a step toward restoring justice. Inside prison, Turner must have felt the net tightening. In December 2004, he was formally charged with 10 murders. Investigators tried to get him to talk, but he stayed quiet or denied everything. It did not matter. DNA spoke louder than any confession. The genetic fingerprints on the bodies pointed straight at him, no matter the distance or years in between. Detectives were horrified to realize that aside from the periods when he was incarcerated, Turner had killed nearly every single year. By day he worked as a guard, by night he hunted. He was the textbook definition of a sociopath hiding in plain sight. The media exploded with coverage. The face behind the old label Southside Slayer was finally exposed. Los Angeles was stunned. People were especially shaken by the fact that Turner had worked at a homeless shelter, close to the very people society considers most vulnerable. He had turned the role of protector into the role of predator. Investigators widened their search beyond California, looking into Arkansas, where he was born, and Utah, where his mother lived, checking whether disappearances or unsolved murders there might also connect to him. Turner's downfall triggered broader reforms. His case highlighted the importance of preserving DNA evidence and raised strong calls to reform interrogation practices so vulnerable suspects would not be coerced into false confessions. Ironically, through his crimes, Turner revealed deep cracks in the justice system, and society was forced to confront them. But the price was devastating. More than a dozen women were dead, and one innocent man had lost precious years of his life. The 2004 indictment was only the beginning of Turner's crisis. Prosecutors prepared to expose every crime in court. The families of victims, after decades of grief and unanswered questions, finally saw hope. Turner was no longer a shadowy predator. He was a fully unmasked criminal standing before judgment. Without advances in forensic science, he might have retired quietly as a security guard or died anonymously on the streets, taking the truth to his grave. Instead, DNA dragged him back into the light, answering the call of the wronged and the forgotten. What lay ahead for Turner was a long, legal battle and the harsh consequences of the cruelty he had inflicted. There was no escaping now. He was trapped not only by prison walls, but by the vast scientific net that had finally closed around him. In May 2007, the Los Angeles criminal court was packed, with people gathered to witness the trial of one of the most brutal serial killers in American legal history. Chester Dwayne Turner sat at the defense table, expressionless from start to finish. Even though he was cornered by overwhelming scientific evidence, he denied every charge and vowed to fight in court. Prosecutors described Turner as a predator who preyed on the weakest parts of the city and hunted souls. Their opening statement began by reading the names of the victims one by one, from Diane Johnson to Brenda Briss. Each time, the photos of women who had died at Turner's hands filled the courtroom screen. The families in the gallery broke into sobs. The heart of the case was proving to the jury how Turner's DNA was found on the victims' bodies and at the crime scenes. DNA analysts called by the prosecution explained the complex science in simple terms, emphasizing that the likelihood of Turner's DNA matching the victims by chance was 1 in trillions. It was physical evidence so strong that it virtually erased the possibility of anyone else being the killer. The defense argued that there might have been contamination or procedural errors, but it was nowhere near enough to tear down the carefully built fortress of scientific proof. As the trial went on, the shocking cruelty behind Turner's crimes was revealed in chilling detail. Prosecutors showed that he had not only killed his victims, but also degraded them in the way he disposed of their bodies. When testimony turned to the case of Regina Nadine Washington, who had been pregnant, the courtroom atmosphere froze. Turner had taken the life of a child who had not yet been born along with the mother, and prosecutors condemned him as someone who had thrown away any trace of humanity. Family members took the stand and tearfully described the years of pain they endured after their daughters and sisters were taken by a monster named Turner. For more than a decade, they had wandered in the dark, not knowing who the killer was, and they poured that anger and grief directly in front of him. After weeks of testimony, the jury finally reached a verdict. On May 31, 2007, they found Turner guilty on 10 counts of murder and 1 count of fetal murder. Even as the verdict was read, Turner did not blink, but that was only the beginning. On July 11, 2007, during the sentencing hearing, the judge sentenced him to death, declaring that his crimes were so extreme that there was no reason to show mercy. Turner was then transferred to death row at San Quentin State Prison, but justice did not stop there. Investigators were convinced that Turner had committed more murders and continued their work. Even though he had already been sentenced to death, prosecutors refused to abandon other unsolved cases where Turner's DNA had been found. Through this process, 4 more victims were identified, including Alondra Joy Spun and Cynthia Johnson. Some of these cases had once been pinned on David Allen Jones, who had been wrongfully convicted, making it essential for the courts to uncover the truth. In 2011, Turner was charged with 4 additional counts of murder. The second trial began in 2014. Already on death row, Turner acted even more arrogant. as if he had nothing left to lose. But prosecutors pushed harder, armed with even more advanced DNA technology. Investigators dug through evidence storage rooms, analyzing microscopic fibers and trace fluids preserved from decades earlier, showing once again that Turner had been at each crime scene. The jury's decision was swift and firm. In June 2014, Turner was found guilty on all 4 additional murder charges and was sentenced to death again. Receiving 2 death sentences symbolized just how deep his crimes ran. One of the most dramatic moments came when Turner's guilt was fully confirmed and David Alan Jones was completely exonerated. As the court finalized Turner's convictions, it officially overturned the wrongful judgment that had once ruined Jones's life. With the darkness surrounding Turner finally lifted, the truth began shining again on an innocent man. Turner never apologized to Jones or to the families of the victims, but the court cut through his silence and imposed the harshest punishment available. Throughout the trial, Turner's personality fit the textbook definition of a psychopath. He seemed to treat his crimes like trophies, and at times acted as though he enjoyed the attention of the courtroom. Experts said he had built his own twisted kingdom in society's darkest corners, satisfying his warped hunger for power by deciding who lived and who died. Prosecutors warned that if he had not been caught, the number of victims in Los Angeles would likely have grown dramatically. The long legal battle from 2007 to 2014 was more than just the punishment of a killer. It was also part of the process of helping Los Angeles heal from years of fear caused by serial murders. Every time a victim's name was spoken, the city remembered and mourned. Every ruling against Turner reaffirmed that justice still mattered. After the sentence was finalized, Turner left the courtroom, surrounded by heavy security. Seeing his back as he walked out, grieving families clung to each other and wept. The burden that had weighed on their hearts for decades was finally, even if only slightly, lifted. Although the trials ended, the shock Turner left behind lingered. Now, on death row, only a long and lonely wait for execution remained. He never showed remorse, but the court put an end to his violent reign by giving him the harshest punishment the law could impose. The climax of this chapter closed with the clear message that evil had lost and justice had won. Turner's death sentence brought peace to the victims and served as a warning to society, marking the case as a historic judgment. After receiving 2 death sentences, Chester Dwayne Turner was no longer the predator who once stalked the streets of Los Angeles. He was now just another inmate, locked inside a narrow cell at San Quentin State Prison. His life became subject to constant surveillance and strict control, and the price for his brutal crimes was transformed into an endless wait for execution. California's death penalty system is known for long delays, complicated appeals, and political debate. Turner used this system to keep fighting legally, not so much to prove his innocence, but to stall his punishment in what looked more like a desperate and cowardly attempt to buy time. On November 30, 2020, the California Supreme Court issued its final ruling on Turner's automatic appeal. The court overturned the conviction related to the fetal homicide charge. In the 1989 Regina Nadine Washington case, the decision was based on legal questions about how the law at the time treated an unborn child as a separate victim of murder. However, the court upheld every other murder conviction involving 14 adult women and left Turner's death sentence firmly in place. The reversal of the fetal homicide charge was a matter of legal interpretation, not a rewriting of Turner's true brutality. He remains one of the deadliest serial killers in the city's history and still sits on death row. The biggest legal lesson from Turner's case was the victory of forensic science. His arrest and conviction proved how risky it can be to rely only on eyewitness accounts or circumstantial evidence, and how powerful DNA can be in correcting injustice. The story of David Alan Jones, who lost more than a decade of his life in prison for crimes he did not commit, stands as a permanent stain and a painful reminder in American legal history. Although he was compensated by the state, the 11 years he spent behind bars can never be restored. The case showed how easily investigators can fall into confirmation bias, and how much careful scientific review is needed to uncover the truth. Even in 2024, Turner's shadow had not completely faded. Investigators continued reviewing unsolved cases connected to places where he had once lived. Eventually, he was charged as the prime suspect in the 1998 murder of Atisha Camp in Salt Lake City, Utah. It revealed just how far his crimes may have spread across time and geography. Every city he passed through, and every place he stayed became part of a growing investigation. Even though he was locked up, Turner was forced to watch his past crimes resurface one by one, a constant reminder of the weight of his actions. The case also led to major changes in Los Angeles. The area around Figueroa Street, where many of the murders occurred, saw major improvements in policing. New discussions began around social programs designed to protect vulnerable women, who often live outside the safety net. Turner preyed on society's weakest, But the community responded by strengthening the very links he targeted. Families of the victims, though unable to bring back their loved ones, found some measure of healing as they watched the real killer be identified and punished. Each year they gathered to remember the victims, hoping Turner's name will be remembered not as a source of fear, but as an evil figure ultimately defeated by justice. Turner's final years are now marked by isolation and time that barely moves. Death row at San Quentin has taken away all the freedom he once abused. He can no longer harm anyone. All that remains is for him to wait for the law to decide how his life ends. Experts say many serial killers like Turner do not feel true remorse, and instead glorify their crimes or mock the system that caught them. Based on Turner's cold behavior in court, few expect him to ever sincerely repent. Regardless, society has judged him as one of the most brutal criminals of our time and intends to hold him accountable until the very end. In the end, the Chester Dwayne Turner case reminds us that evil always leaves a trace, and truth eventually comes to light, even if it takes years. The stories of the 14 women he killed and of David Allen Jones, who was wrongfully imprisoned, serve as warnings about the dangers of overconfidence in law enforcement and as proof of the importance of scientific investigation. Turner will likely spend the rest of his life as a death row inmate, but the lessons from his crimes will continue to shape discussions about justice and human rights. The city has moved on from the terror he created, yet the work of preventing such tragedies remains everyone's responsibility. The name Chester Dwayne Turner now stands as a grim warning of just how dark human desire can become, closing the final chapter of this long and painful story. That is where today's story ends. Please hit the subscribe button and the like button. Thank you for watching.